Photography. As you all know, we've already done one guided tour a few days back, and we hope those who attended it have enjoyed it and have come back to attend this session as well. Just to give you a quick introduction for those of you who are attending this for the first time, the Chennai Photo Biennale is a public arts photography festival that happens in Chennai, which is a southern city in India, every 2 years. We had the fantastic opportunity of visiting the Biennale in Germany as part of the Goethe Institute's South Asian Photography Visitors Program. And 17 members from different countries in South Asia had come together to meet artists, to see the Biennale, and it was fantastic. And while we enjoyed the shows, unfortunately now because of the pandemic, the shows had to close down on the ground. But the good thing is that the shows are online. So you have the opportunity to check them out. And through this collaboration with the Biennale for Actual Photography, we hope to sort of bring you closer to some of the artists, to some of the curators from the scene, and to have conversations with them. I would just like to inform you that this tour is going to be recorded, but neither the chats nor the audience will really get recorded. So rest assured. And I would like to begin now by welcoming Yasmin Meinicke, who's the Managing Director of the Biennale for Actual Photography, and she will introduce our guest today. Hi, Yasmin.
Thank you, Shruti. Hi, I'm very happy to have you all here. And all means Thomas Schirmböck, which is the director of ZEPHYR, an art space for photography in Mannheim, and of the Reiss-Engelhorn-Museen, and of course our artists, Courtesans Sonderegger, so Adrian Cortis and Jojakim Sonderegger. Sorry, the other way around. As you said, your family. I'm sorry. And yes, we are very happy to have you here. And I will only put in some questions. Otherwise, I'm very happy to let as many people ask questions through the chat as you want. And Chuchi will also stick in whenever it fits. And yes, I'm happy to be here and welcome you all.
Thank you, Yasmin. And now we hand over to Thomas to share with us about this wonderful show called Reconsidering Icons. Thomas, over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy that you're here, wherever you are. It is an interesting situation for me because I'm quite used to give tours through the shows which we are hosting or which we are presenting, but usually we are having an audience. So I can't see you, but you can hear me. You can write your questions, and we will try to answer them. We is, in this case, me. I'm the head of ZEPHYR, called ZEPHYR, which is a space for contemporary photography and associated to the Reiss-Engelhorn-Museen in Mannheim. And we is also Adrian Sonderegger and Jojakim Cortis, who are wonderful artists. And the art of them is building the main structure of the exhibition, which we are going through right now. That exhibition is called Reconsidering Icons, and it is curated by David Campany. David Campany was, when he was picked to be the curator of that festival, he was a free-floating artist and curator, and now he is working for the ICP in New York, which is wonderful for him, and we are all very happy about the work he was doing. And today we will see a small part of it, which is not small by content, but we are seeing only 12 or 13 works. I cannot remember exactly. You can count and correct me later. And the first one we are seeing is a work by Sonderegger and Cortis, and called Making of Tiananmen Square. It is Cortis and Sonderegger are two artists who are doing something which is very nice, because I think on the one hand they are playing with our ability to look at images, and on the other hand they are doing something like hiding a truth we are used to see. And the wonderful thing about hidden truths is that sometimes when we cannot see a thing which we are used to see, we realize, what is it in reality? And what was that? What was that moment? We had in Germany for me, a very intense moment when that artist who's always hiding huge structures behind curtains and other stuff. What was his name? Very famous. The first building he was hiding behind fabrics was in Heidelberg, the Deutsch-Amerikanische Institut.
Can you hear me? Christo.
Yeah, Christo, right. And he was hiding in the German parliament in Berlin completely. And I think that was the moment when most people in Germany realized, oh, I've seen that building a million times on images, but I don't know how it looks. So, and that's changed something. And you are doing something similar on the surface. And when we look at that image, we can see a little how you were making it. So I just wanted to ask you, Adrian and Jojakim, what makes you picking this image instead of another one?
I mean, when we started with this project, we had some images we had on our minds. So I think that there's some classics which we had to do. And this is, for example, one image which is one of the most famous, I would say. And at the beginning, it was also really important to pick images that we are able to do. I mean, we started with model making, and so the older images we started, there were no people on it, or maybe really, really small. So at the beginning, it was also this important criteria to pick this image.
Here's a very small person.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the story how the series started. So it was summer 2012. We've been sitting in our studio and waiting for jobs coming in. So we had no money, and we had a joke between us that we could copy the most expensive photographs at this time, and it was Andreas Gursky, Rhine 2. And that's how the project started. So we reconstructed the Rhine River, very abstract, very simple in doing it. And on the list of the most expensive photographs, it was Cindy Sherman on second and third place. So we had to think about modeling figures and sculpturing, but at this time it wasn't possible. So we opened up the theme to the most iconic images, photographs taken. Yeah, that's how it started.
That's very nice. And I mean, you are constructing these images, and in the same moment you are also deconstructing it by letting us know how you were making it. Not exactly, but you are placing the glue here, or the boxes of the models in which the tanks were delivered, and you can see some paint over here, and how the structures of the arrows, which probably are on the ground. So that means you're playing with our own with the visitors' own joy in looking at models. It's not only the joy of looking at of interesting and iconic images, but also the joy of looking at models. Is that true, or?
Yeah, I think it's similar what you said at the beginning, that when you look at our images, you think, oh, I know this image. But then you see, oh, no, it's not the image I know. So you start to look at the image again and see, oh, you have these tools, and these tools are used to make this. It's also similar when we construct such an image, that we really have to pay attention to every detail. Mm-hmm. For us, it's the same. We think we know the image, but when you really think about the image, that there are so many details which you don't know that much about. So for us, it's also reading this image again.
Okay, thank you very much. That might it be for the moment. We are going a little. Now what? Well, for some. Now it's going. We are turning around the entrance, and we are going to here, to a different part of the show, to a different installation, which is done by Max Pinkers and Dries de Porter, and it's called Trophy Camera. The thing we are looking at is a small camera, a yellow one. I try to bring up a couple of images. Can you see that? Of that camera. It is delivered in a wonderful box, locked with a key. On this, you can activate it and deactivate it with a key, which is very important. This is why it is presented so nicely here. The camera itself is a very simple camera. It has it is different from any camera you probably might have seen. It has an on-off knob, and it has a little display. And on the back side, what we cannot see, it has a little lens. And when you push the button here, it makes one image. And that image is analyzed by the software, which is inside of the camera. And it is analyzed under certain aspects. What can you see on this image, which has been taken right now? And then the camera starts, a little processor in the camera starts checking out whether the image you have been taken is somehow connected to the images which you can see next to here in that long line, which are the images which have been winning the World Press Photography Prize since its beginning until the year 2017. This one is the last one. It's a pretty famous image also. Let me check if I can get a little closer. Not close enough, but you might have seen it. It's the famous shooting of the Russian ambassador in Ankara. So if your image is close enough to one of these models of images, and that's similar to what you two have been doing, then it will be transferred to a website, which both artists have been established, and then it will be presented here on that screen. We had, during the runtime of our show, we had, I don't know exactly, maybe Yasmin knows, but it was 2 weeks, a couple of thousand visitors and a couple of hundred people taking photographs with that little camera, and nobody was able to take a photograph which was similar enough to be displayed on that website. So the question is it really true? Is it possible, or is it a game? I was trying it also. I failed. I only got 86%, and I think you need to have 90% to be uploaded. So it is an interesting game. It is probably true because I met Dries de Porter when he was installing the whole thing, and it was really a very serious young man. So I cannot imagine that he was not honest talking about that point. And we are getting back to Courtesans Sonderegger with one more image. An iconic one, Henri Cartier-Bresson, after or making of Henri Cartier-Bresson. The title is Someone is Jumping Over a Puddle Behind Gare Saint-Lazare, taken in Paris in 1932. And here again, you can see how he was constructing the image. The original image might be in this frame. And it's wonderfully done. It's by itself, it is, I mean, if it is anything, it is a wonderful artwork. And even if the original photo by Henri Cartier-Bresson wasn't an artwork because he was simply a photographer. I doubt that he was reflecting himself as a photographer in 1932. That is definitely a wonderful piece of art, what we are looking at. And I make a quick change up to here, because this is an image which is, I think, your latest one, or at least your latest published one, Courtesans Sonderegger. It is not famous in the world. I'm pretty sure it is famous in Germany. I have no idea whether it's famous in Switzerland, because it was a political tragedy. It was a spy game. And in the end, the prime minister of a northern German country, part of the country, died in a bathtub in Geneva in the hotel Beau Rivage, and he was discovered by a journalist. And that photo made the journalist pretty famous, and it was a huge thing. And it is doubtful whether he killed himself or whether he had contacts to some Secret Service objects. And we have something which is really very nice. We have a short movie. I try to activate right now, and then we can see, wait. Oh, I did it wrong, sorry. Pushed the wrong button. Now.
Yeah, maybe I can give some background information. When we start with the new image, we put the camera on the tripod. That's the very first thing. We have to find out which lens it was used on the original photograph taken. And then we start building the set, the model in front of the camera. We are taking images with the computer. So we shoot digital, and we can all the time overlay the images with the original. So we see what we have to change and what is good. So you see at the beginning, we have just wooden structures who give a little bit of sense of the bathroom there. And the more time passes, the closer it gets to the original photograph. So at the beginning, the steps are quite huge. And at the end, it's like very detailed work. So most of the time at the end, we have to tell each other to stop. We have to say, it's okay, it's okay. It's totally fine. So yeah. And you see that everything is three-dimensional. Some people stand in front of our photographs and don't believe it, but it is three-dimensional. And one of the most important thing is the lighting. So here you have just a flash of a compact analog camera. So it was relatively easy to set the light up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
How big is the model?
Pardon me?
How big is the model?
The model is about 1 to 3. So the head is like a puppet. Mm-hmm. And the whole setting is about 2.5 meters long. It's quite long, yes, because we need some perspective, and about 1 meter wide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Why did you choose this image?
Because we have the connection to Switzerland also. The
hotel.
Yeah, the hotel in Geneva. And the Swiss police photographer failed because his camera didn't work very well. So we tried to do another shot. No, it's also an image that is quite interesting because, for example, Thomas Demand, the German artist who reconstructs newspaper images with paper, he did the photo also, and so that's the thing about icons, they are repeated all the time.
Yasmin, just a short question. How much time are you having?
You have half an hour, and
okay,
we are always happy for questions from the audience, and if they are awesome, you can just type them in the chat, and if you don't have any, don't worry, we have enough. We are the hosts.
We will come back to Courtesans Sonderegger later, and right now we are moving a little ahead to two artists who do very interesting work, which is highly impressive for me. Schirmböck and Chennai, and they are working about justice, the failure of justice. They are working about the appearance of images and what, and their work is something I would call highly social relevant in any sense. And they are here with a wonderful presentation, which you see in this frame, this strictly lit band of images, which is called Afterlife. It's from the year 2009, and it refers to a scene of the year 1979, shortly after the revolution in Iran, when the Shah was kicked out. A group of Kurdish people have been executed. And a professional photographer from Tehran photographed the scenery. And one of his images became very famous. It won the Pulitzer Prize, and it was never known who that original photographer was. And many years later, a Wall Street journalist, a Wall Street magazine journalist, found the photographer and made an interview with him. And so Schirmböck and Chennai got aware of his personality, and they visited him, and they were going with him through all the images he had taken of that famous execution, and they started to deconstruct that famous his famous images, and they were putting it together under new conditions. They were putting it on glass. And the glass plates are separated by small metal frames, and the whole thing is standing on a shelf and is lit very nicely. And you can see different situations from that shooting, from the people awaiting their final sound, up to when they were lying on the floor. And there are also images of the people lying on the floor, getting what French language calls coup de grâce, that means the final shot in the head, to make sure that they are really dead. It is wonderful. It is because of the shadows you can see in there. It is wonderful because it is destructive. It is not only destructive, it is also destructive, I think, but it is a wonderful reflection about the whole process they were doing. And are there any questions to that work?
None at the moment, Thomas.
Good.
Well, I don't know if everybody understands. So it was, there was one original photograph, and then the other photographs were found, and it was something like you had the scenery, and there was only one perspective in the beginning, right, Thomas? And then the photographer was found, and he showed all the other photographs making around the scenery.
The rest of the film.
Yes.
The rest of the film,
so yeah, you had many perspectives on this one scenery, and then they made collages out of it. Yeah. So yes, and they separated, and they separated the people who were killed and the people who killed, right?
That might be. You said they separated these people?
Yes, they separated these when they
sometimes they appear in the same frame.
Ah, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. We can, but the awaiting is very interesting. Here, for instance, you have one person in three different moments.
How would you interpret, make an interpretation for the shadows?
Excuse me?
How would you make an interpretation for the shadows?
The shadows are not planned. I saw other presentations of Blumberg and Schennerer, and it was the light was more flat, and the guy who is doing the light work in the museum came up with the idea to set the light on these images like this, which is, I think, wonderful because it gives a lot of depth into it, and shadows by itself put something to the story and make it bigger somehow, a little different. Some of the elements here's for instance just the landscape of the surrounding area in which these people have been killed. That might be interesting later when we come to another work. And but I want to show you one other work of Blumberg and Schennerer, which is presented here. It's called Woe from Wit. Woe from Wit didn't tell anything to me, since I'm a German and not a native speaker, but it means something like pain which comes which comes from thinking, which is very interesting. There is no equivalent translation. It is in original. It was a Russian novel, as I learned, which was setting that meaning, and the translation was and now it is something like it is a phrase. And Blumberg and Schennerer made something very interesting. They were constructing a Vcr project, and here are the Vcr glasses. You can put them on, and you are instantly taken out of the space in which you are when you are in the Biennale for Aktuelle Fotografie, because you lose contact to the outside world, and you're in a white space and you don't know where you are, and you are in the same space in which I showed it to you a couple of minutes ago in the year 2017. In December, the Russian ambassador in Ankara was killed. And you enter that space, and with these glasses or goggles on, and there's simply nothing. And then things start to develop. And maybe it works. It works. So you can have a look by yourself.
Unshadowed, white, clean, artificial. The space is devoted to the technology of aesthetics. The essentially religious nature of the white cube is most forcefully expressed by what it does to the humanity of anybody who enters it. One does not eat, drink, lie down, or sleep. One does not get ill, go mad, sing, dance, or make love. And so therefore it had possibly practical, not to say psychiatric possibilities.
So what we were hearing was a very short summary, and which does not really give you an idea what you were seeing, because the atmosphere is so different. Because you are in a white cube, which is perfectly modeled. A very interesting connections to Sonderegger and Cortis, and it is a white space, and then the voice you were hearing starts talking. It is a philosopher who wrote about the white space and the white cube, and the white cube is a space in which no real life happens. Nobody falls asleep in a white space, he says. Nobody makes love in a white space. Nobody lays down in a white space, and he's telling that, and while he's telling it, slowly but steady, the room starts to fill with images. At once, images appear on the walls, and you can walk through the room and look at these images, which are some Russian landscapes and cityscapes. And you think, this really looks strange, and I don't like that kind of photography. And then at once, figures appear in the room, but they are not three-dimensional figures. They are like cutout figures. They look like foils hanging in the room, and these figures which are in the room are those cutouts of the people who have been in that exhibition hall in Ankara during the shooting of the Russian ambassador by security guard. Thank God it was not me. And the whole setting is spooky, but it is not. It is not like a like a Geisterbahn. I don't know what the English word is. Like it's not like on a fairground that you get a shiver from it when you look at it. It is somehow it is strange, and it is very clear that a white space can be used for many things, and it seems to be a contradiction to what the philosopher is telling, because surely people fall asleep in white cubes. I myself fell asleep in a white cube once. I remember very clearly. It was fun, and so, but the whole situation changes constantly, and you can move in that space. It's a lovely piece of work, I have to confess. I like it a lot. Even if I have also to confess, some of the visitors were really disappointed, because David Campany said at the opening, at the beginning initial tour, he said, well, in the end, something is happening. And they said, well, there's nothing happening in the end. And that tells us that expectation sometimes makes the adventure of life smaller than when we go and live without big expectations. Mm-hmm. So we turn around and we go to the next step. Here we have, Yasmin, maybe you are right. I thought it is in one image, but it is not in one image. He's put out. So I have to correct myself. Yasmin was right. He was splitting the victims and the murderers. Okay. And now we are coming back to Cortesans Sonderegger and a very famous image, one of the most famous images of all times, which is Robert Capa. I make it bigger because I want to show something to you in the image. It is, when you go close enough, you can see here the photo, the original photograph lying. So Courtesans Sonderegger are helping us when we look at the scenery they were constructing. If we look close enough, we have the chance to get a little reminder how the image originally looked like. So,
Well seen.
excuse me?
Well seen, yes. Yeah, I mean, the surrounding of the original photograph seems to be authentic, seems to be our studio environment as we have been working just 5 minutes before. But we are professional photographers, and we also stage the the surrounding at the end when we take the final shot. So we placed the image, I believe, there especially for the final shot.
But it's all used. I mean, it's not documentary photography, the surrounding, but sometimes we have to make place for another project, and so we have to put everything away. So, but everything you see is used to reconstruct the image.
Are you sometimes working parallel on different models?
No, not we used to when we worked on the book. Maybe we had maybe two, but no, they take so much time that we actually can't do twice.
The guest just asked, how long do you take for one model? How long do you work at one model?
It really depends on. I mean, if there's a person on the image, it takes much more longer. But we have the Loch Ness image. We had maybe 2 weeks, not even. But there are also images we had maybe 2 months, 3 months. It really depends on which image.
Yeah.
I have a question. Sorry, can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Of course, the constructed image and the scene per se is very intriguing. But there also comes in the question of copyrights, and that's been kind of playing at the back of my head. That is there a play of copyrights here? How do you work around that? Because you are essentially using another photographer's work as well and working along with that. So could you maybe just share with us how you go about that process?
I mean, for us, it's not a thing about copyright, but working on such a project, there is the problem of copyright, of course. For us, it's a new image, so we don't see that we do something wrong. But for the book, for example, we informed all artists, photographers, or trusts that we are doing this project.
Okay.
And normally, when the artist still living, it's no problem. I mean, for Andreas Gurski, it was no problem. But sometimes trusts are a little bit more complicated.
Hesitant, yes.
But yeah, it was actually only one image which we had a problem, and so we didn't put it in the book. So
Okay.
it was
Okay. Okay.
That's interesting, because what you are doing is what an image necessary, or all the images we know are having is they are cropped. They sometimes they have a frame around it. They are limited, and you are taking these limits away. You are putting them into a bigger something, which is a different something. It is, and which is definitely a different surrounding than the images, than the original images have been existing in. So it is something totally different. It's only 1/3 or 1/4 of the whole image, which in this one, which refers to the kappa shot, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's similar what we think about it, but the problem is when you're having a project that's you see also in different countries, and the book is sold in different countries, then you also have different laws and different courts, and yeah, if it's only in Switzerland, we wouldn't be that problem, but for example, in the US, yeah, it's not what you want.
Yeah.
So that's why we informed. We didn't ask for permission, but we informed them, and so was for us okay at the end.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it's also very important that the title of the image is referring to the original photographer and the title of the photograph taken. So we have the name in the title. It's always the same. It's Making of Robert Capa, Falling Soldier, 1963. Yes, 36. And interesting thing is that we once got an email from the Ansel Adams Trust in the US, and she asked us, why are we doing this, and blah, 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 blah. And she wanted to ask us that we are aware that we use the trademark of Ansel Adams. So it's not only a question of copyright, it's also a question of trademark at the end.
Right.
Holy. Okay,
Somebody
then it
asked,
gets.
how long will you, or how long do you preserve the model before destroying it, or do you have the models, or what is the artwork in the end? It's the photography, right?
Yeah, for this project, it's the photography, but we keep some pieces like trophies. But yeah, I mean, our studio is not that big, so we can't keep everything, and much of the material we also recycle. We use them again, like all the clouds, they go into another image. But for newer work, we showed in Munich. We showed also the model, the setup from Uwe Barschel. So we also tried to do that, because there was the interest to see the model itself, and for us only showing it in a room wasn't enough. So we put the model, the setup in a inverted camera obscura. So in a box where it's really bright and with a lens, and there's a projection of the image of the setup, which you see outside. So yeah, it's complicated to explain, but it was interesting for us to also work with the model and go a little bit away from the photography.
When we look at this image and we turn around, we land at this image. Which pretty interesting because it is related to the artwork of Adrian Sonderegger and Jojakim Cortis. And it is again by Max Pincus, the one with the camera. And in this case with some Werdemeister. It is huge. It is like 180 by 240 centimeters. And the problem with Robert Capa, who did that the last image, the original one, the problem with him was that he was a guy who was making up things. Not everything was exactly as he was pretending it would be. So there are serious doubts about that image, the falling soldier in Spain from 1936. And there have been doubts for a very long time. He has been saying, well, I didn't see the situation as it happened because I was holding the camera over my head when I was photographing it. And he said it was somewhere near Granada. And there's a professor, a Spanish professor, who started to make comparisons of how the landscape looked in the image of Robert Capa with a exact place where he said it would have been, and he said it can't be there. It was like 65 kilometers away when he took the image, and there was no front line. So there was definitely no fighting, and so that might be one good argument to say this image might be staged and not an image which was taken out of an existing reality. Let me keep it this way. So, and Werdemeister and Pincus went to that place in Spain, in the middle of nowhere, and they started not photographing, but taking an image of that spot where it happened. When we look exactly, we see that the line of the horizon and the form of the hills should be exactly the same as in the image of Capa. But what they were doing was not taking a photograph out of it, but making images. And they did it in a very interesting way, like what you see in this image is the museum in Amsterdam, and a very famous painting by Rembrandt, which is scanned by a huge museum scanner. And very slowly it takes up all the layers, and it takes, I think, months until it is finished. They are working every day on it, and but it will take forever until it's done. So a machine similar to that, Werdemeister and Pincus were bringing to Spain, and they were taking that image by, I think, 46 different scans, and they were combining these scans. And the problem was that they had to work in. They could only work when it was totally wind still. There was no wind, because in the moment in which wind was going, and the leaves were starting to move, and the grass was starting to move, or the clouds were too fast, the scanner would have crashed totally. So they had to work without any winds. But when you go close enough to the image, you can see little rainbows in between the leaves and somewhere in the graphs, or rainbow colored pieces. And that are the pieces in which the leaves were shaking. So the nature formed something, the influence of nature changed this image into something artificial looking at some tiny spots. So it is not a photography. It is an image taken by a completely different technique. And it is very interesting because it refers to that problem what Robert Capa was having. And they were trying to make, with the greatest possible accuracy, one image of that space where the original image by Robert Capa was taking, which is this. So that's a very nice story, and I really adore the work David Campany has been doing by putting together all these images and telling these little stories about possible fake and truth and how to react in it. I mean, you are very clear, Adrian Sonderegger and Jojakim Cortis, you are very clearly speaking about what you are doing. You are not trying to make things up. You are staging things very, very clearly, and you are making the process evident. So Robert Capa was handling things different, but maybe his situation was, I'm sure his situation was different, yeah.
Can I ask Adrian, Jojakim, how important was the background of the Capa for you to make this model? Is it more because it's an iconic image and you wanted to stage it, or is the background important as well?
I would say because it's an iconic image. I mean, if you look at all these iconic images, there's often a story behind the image. And I think this, I mean, people love stories, and so also Uwe Barschel, there's a mystery if he killed himself or we don't know. But these images are part of our memories. So and it's a really famous one. So that's why we choose that.
Yeah.
I think we have another question, Yasmin.
Yes, we do. I thought we could keep it for later, but sure. It's a nice one. It's to Adrian and Jojakim. So Trixie says right now, it's with the Corona crisis, everybody is saying that we are in a historic moment. And do you think there will be an iconic image of the Corona crisis? And yes,
I think it's a hard.
How could that be?
Hard to answer. I mean, the definition of iconic image also changed. I think there's so many images we see every day, and I think it's more complicated and more hard to get really iconic. I think, it takes time, but no, I think it changed.
Yeah, I believe there will be an iconic Corona crisis image, but it takes time. And time is reducing all the images to maybe 1 or 100. We don't know yet, but when the image is more and more repeated in the news, it's getting more and more iconic.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, everyone, we have 5 minutes left. Okay. So it's just an information.
That is very helpful. Thank you a lot. So we have here, where is it? Where is the spot? So we go really quickly. We have 2 images which refer on the very first known image of photography, which is done by Nicéphore Niepce in 1826 in Chalon-sur-Saône. And this one is an image by a Spanish photographer, Juan Foncuberta. He did something which is very common. He used a Google software to replace, to build the whole image out of existing images he found in the internet under the search terms of photography with PH and Y in the end, and photo, F-O-T-O. And he was setting this together. That was in the year 2005, in which that idea was really brilliant and new, and we can see how quickly technology and time changes. because it is something which is pretty normal for us. On the other hand, we have on the left-hand side, and we can't remain here very long, the same image redone wonderfully, way more technical, a couple of years later by Adrian Sonderegger and Jojakim Cortis. And I like the brush. I like the colors, which are, there's no other image of your images, Adrian and Jojakim, in which the color is so important, because you have all these colors of that cleaning device and the brush and the cutter and so on. And this very first image, which was totally black and gray and white, is so reduced that this really pops out. I think it is a lovely piece. But I really, we have to be quick, because we only have 5 minutes, and we come to a wonderful work. Which is called King. It is a very slow moving video based on an image by Alfred Wertheimer taken in 1956, and it shows the very young Elvis Presley in his together with his with a group of people. His mother is sitting on a bench. We cannot see her right now, and there are 2 other people standing in the background. And the young king is young. He's 22 years old, as far as if I remember correctly. And this image is taken, is the last image in which he was not really famous. He became extremely famous shortly after it, because he combined the gospel music with hillbilly sounds and made something out of it which was totally new. And David Claerbout used that image and took as many photographs of Elvis Presley as he could, and he modeled him digitally in 3D. And so, because Elvis Presley was a very, very prominent person, and he was, photographs of his were taken all the time. He was there, he was appearing in numbers of films, and so we know exactly how he was looking. So he put him together as an artificial personality, and the camera very slowly drives up, down, and around his body, which is not real, but real constructed. And so it is pretty fascinating how he is constructing a world of the 1956, which did not exist in a way, in the way he is now showing it to us, but it is highly plausible that it was similar to that what it is. And it is a very nice and contemplating moment of how a star is born, because we see how the star is born right in that moment. And that work is from the year, I forgot. So, the whole video takes like, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly, maybe 15 plus minutes. And we see not more than 3 minutes out of it. Yeah. But it is very nicely done, I think. Also by Marco Vadana, who did that whole, who was photographing the whole thing. It's really, you can really walk through it. It's nice. It's good. It's a good job he did.
Mm-hmm. He's here right now, so thanks, Marco.
Yeah.
I have one more, like a general question to Reconsidering Icons, because we have an international event right now. I wondered if Shuchi could say something about the icons we show here in Germany in this exhibition, if you know all these images in India as well, or if icons like we have them here are more localized.
So, of course, we are here with some of the popular I would say, images, like of course the Cartier-Bresson, the one from the shooting that won the World Press Photo, you know, and the more popular ones that come out in the news or that have been that have emerged from popular photographers, you know, with years and years of people studying their images, and so that a lot of us are definitely familiar with quite a few, but sometimes not with like the one of the bathtub one, which Courtesans and Sonderegger have done. I don't think many of us are familiar with that. And it's very interesting because even when I was looking it up and trying to understand the context of that image and what makes it so iconic, also culturally, there are a lot of different things that could be iconic. Maybe in Europe is different than what it could be in India. But of course, there are some universal iconics, you know, some of which we have seen here.
Yeah.
So if this very same exhibition would be in India, you would have had some of these images, but some different ones as well.
Yes, for sure. For sure. It's like, I think how Mahatma Gandhi is not just an iconic figure, but I think he's also very well known, and any of his photographs, if they were to be used and reconstructed, you know, they would still be recognized to a large extent, I would say.
Yeah.
So it also depends on sometimes the personality, and of course, sometimes it is the image per se. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Great. So I think before we are about to close our session, my colleague Nisha, she is going to share a feedback form that we would request everyone to check it out maybe immediately after the session, because your thoughts will be fresh. And if you could share that with us, it would be really helpful, because we would like to get your feedback to improve maybe our next sessions in case if you want any changes. But I think I thoroughly enjoyed today's session, and which is why I tried to be quiet and just observe everything. Thank you, Cortis and Sonderegger, for sharing. I mean, I want to discuss so much more about your work, but unfortunately we are out of time. And thank you, Thomas, for really helping us through the shows once again, because I think when we visited, of course, I do remember all of these, you know, iconic works and the images and the feeling that they kind of, like, sometimes you just go, you know, closer into them to understand. And I remember that feeling, but talking about them today has helped us get a better understanding. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes,
of course.
Super.
Of course.
So much.
Course.
And we have one question. I think we stop here for everyone. So we are very happy that you all stayed with us, all the visitors. And I will stop the recording for everyone.
Okay.
And if you want to